relationship with them. Never mind those small issues where we find ourselves disagreeing. But I must say, we are very, very, thankful. We called you today for this special press conference. It's a special weekly press brief, unlike others, because for those of you who might be, in fact, everyone is aware, not anyone, not those of you, everyone is aware that the month of November, for us here at the ruling party, it is a crossover month for a variety of things that I will leave to Comrade Acting Spokesperson to share with you. And Comrade Mahia, for those who are not familiar with him, but I'm sure he has been our usual colleague on these occasions, is the secretary of the War Veterans. You name them ex-detainees, restrictees, and collaborators to the Politburo. You might also be interested to know that the party added upon its two wings, the Youth League and the Women's League. We now have the War Veterans League. So, and Comrade Mahia is in charge of that wing of the party, a special wing indeed, for two reasons. One, it is the reason why we all have this freedom. The freedom that we have is you carry out your obvious duties on a daily basis. It is courtesy of the war veterans. And secondly, of course, now that I alluded earlier that this is a special month, you are pretty aware of the historic watershed role that was played by our war veterans to ensure that the new dispensation is given birth to. Needless to talk about the exploits of Comrade Mahia, who probably had to endure quite very regrettable and unfortunate Comrade Acting Spokesperson. He became a detainee once more in an independent Zimbabwe, this time around, not from the enemies of the Republic as it were, but from some among his compatriots. And even at the hands of some born frees, I don't need to say much, but it's an emotional month. One, that Comrade Chinamasa will share with you. So I will not waste much of the time. It's over to you, Comrade Acting Spokesperson. Once it's done, then Comrade Mahia will give you a few remarks.
No, thank you very much for your support to this weekly brief. And I wanted to thank my colleague, Comrade Mahia, for joining me on this most important occasion. This brief today is a very significant one because we felt that time has come, especially during this month of November, to say something about the events that took place in November 2017. And with Comrade Mahia here, is going to assist me just to sketch out the events that took place before and that precipitated the events on November 2017. I also take the opportunity, I was asked, I think, a press conference ago or two press conferences ago, I was asked a question about the achievements of the new dispensation. And I think I indicated that I needed more time to put the facts together. More particularly, not that I was ignorant of the achievements, but I felt that there were so many and I needed time to distill the most important events and achievements during that period. That is the 3 years before, after November 2017. So I'll have occasion to touch on that. I also have occasion to touch briefly on the Transitional Stabilization Program and also briefly on the recently launched by His Excellency our President, Comrade D.D. Mnangagwa, the National Development Strategy 1. So I'll give you that, and also I'll have something to say about Gugraundi, if you allow me, as well as just to mention what may some highlights of the November 2017 events. So allow me to read my lengthy statements. This month, the month of November, and in these weeks in particular, have become a sacred weeks for us in Zanu PF and the people of Zimbabwe in general. November is a special month in so many ways, given that it is this month that the people of Zimbabwe and us in Zanu PF in particular reflect on the pain and the joy that ensued when we saw light at the end of the tunnel. Many of us recall that following a series of regrettable events that started in 2015, when then Vice President E.D. Mnangagwa had to endure nearly 3 years of sustained, unprovoked attacks by the fallen G40 cabal. He was served with his marching orders, as we all know, on the 6th of November 2017, in what was an attempted bedroom usurpation of the Executive Constitutional Authority of the President by the fallen gangsters working with the former First Lady. The 6th of November 2017, at exactly 4:45, is a day that the whole nation was plunged into despair, anguish, and anxiety, as no one could speculate what had to become the future of this, our beloved republic. The former late President, Comrade E.R.G. Mugabe, was aging. Those who corrupted their way into his life hatched a plan to usurp the presidency from him by first quarantining from his compatriots on the basis of fake and false reports to him. Resultantly and regrettably, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa was unfairly fired. Instantly, he was isolated from his compatriots and left to bear the responsibility of running away with his dear life with the assistance of his children and unmentionable comrades in their ranks and file. To escape an attempted assassination at the border and to endure night-long journeys, walking by foot to cross into Mozambique, running away from bone-free gangsters in a country that he had given his whole life by way of joining the liberation struggle at a very tender age, and in the process, escaping death by a whisker, following his activities as a crocodile gang member, is something that we reflect upon with a heavy heart. The crocodile gang was one of the first military outfits by the revolutionary Zanu party to engage the Rhodesian enemy, and their activities were the first attempts made to dislodge the enemy from power. He faced that, and on top of the personalized attacks, threats on his life, including poisoning at the notorious interfaith rallies, we reflect on the 6th of November to the 13th of November with a heavy heart and painful heart. We are yet to heal. These were the worst ever days in the chapter of the life of our president, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa, so worse than the hanging sentence he escaped during the early days of the armed struggle, because then it was the enemy who had chosen to fight against, who had imposed a death penalty on him, was threatening to impose the death penalty on him. So imagine this time, it was happening at the hands of his fellow compatriots, working with misguided John Carm Letleys, whom he had contributed to their liberation and grooming. But with the grace of God, we are together with him in flesh and in spirit, leading the nation to the promised land. Zanu PF calls upon the nation to reflect on the month of November, for this is the month of all operations, the month of the legendary Operation Restore Legacy, the month in which we celebrate the boldness and the mightiness of our Zimbabwe Defense Forces, the month in which we celebrate the collective resolve, unity of purpose and oneness of our people, despite unnatural political differences of yesterday, the month in which, combined and bundled together by the undying patriotic spirit of Mbuya Neanda, we stood to shrug off the G40 threats and to defend our constitution. The euphoria that even united opposition forces with us in Zanu PF to lead the nation's crossover from politics of hate to the new dispensation, the Second Republic, led by our President, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa, was no small gesture, but a giant step of statesmanship, which makes us reflect on the month of November with joy as it turned out at the end of the tunnel. ZANU PF will forever cherish that oneness and strongly believes that it is never too late to recover that unity, that togetherness, which we demonstrated to the world, despite the fact that our detractors had wished us the opposite. We take note of the fact that we were and are still aware that negative forces have been burning the midnight candle to sow seeds of disharmony, disunity, division, discohesion, and disunity among our people on the basis of political persuasion. The president has taught us to show them love in return. For he says, let bygones be bygones, an eye for an eye will leave our society a blind society. End of quote. Today, ZANU PF takes pride in sharing with the world and our people, in particular, the success stories of the new republic, as well as rally all and sundry towards the achievement of Vision 2030. In summary, we as a party, ZANU PF, we are buoyed by the milestones achieved thus far. In this short period, halfway through our 5-year term, we have done tremendous work for our people. We congratulate the president and the Zimbabwe Defense Forces and the people of Zimbabwe and the war veterans on whose backbone Operation Restore Order was hinged on, and we want to assure them that this leadership will never betray them. The bravery that accompanied our actions, firstly, the war veterans in resisting the machinations of the G40 cabal, and our actions in launching Operation Restore Order will never go in vain. ZANU PF is watching the unfolding events in the USA closely. As I said earlier, and just recently, we have taken pride in showing them the way, as we saw General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States, on 11th November 2020, coming out guns blazing on the unfolding post-election circus that is taking place in the United States. And he said something that I want you to refer to that audio by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He said, the military did not take an oath to save an individual, but to uphold the Constitution. Our then commander of the Defense Forces, CDF, General Konstantin Chiwenga, did just that on the night of the 13th November 2017. ZANU-PF is proud that after Operation Restore Order, President E.D. Mnangagwa and his entire leadership have managed to achieve the onerous task of uniting a nation that had been ravaged and ripped by the divisive, tumultuous, and tribal politics of the G40 cabal. Indeed, there is no denial that the G40 element had polarized the Zimbabwean society to the extent that there was anxiety on how the nation was going to heal afterwards. As I have said before, they made an onslaught not on the party constitution, on ZANU-PF constitution alone. On the party constitution, they went about dismissing unfairly people elected to positions in our structures and replacing them with appointees who had not been elected. And that, of course, is a legacy that we are still grappling with, what to do to heal the wounds. They made an onslaught on the constitution by seeking to usurp the executive constitutional authority of the presidency and taking over, making decisions, presidential decisions, in place of our aging president then. However, with his wisdom, President E.D. Mnangagwa has been able to unite the people, rising above petty, regional, or tribal politics to a wise statesman and unifying figure who welcomes diversity as a source of pride and not hate. We applaud him for that. Under the new dispensation, President E.D. Mnangagwa has accelerated the pace of agricultural mechanization and modernization, driven by the desire that Zimbabwe cannot continue to rely on natural weather and climatic conditions to determine the quantum of its agricultural output. After reuniting us with our land, the next obvious thing is, and it's always been, production. The massive agricultural mechanization program ongoing is exactly what the nation needs to achieve food self-sufficiency rather than importing. And I need to add here that soon the government will be embarking on a massive irrigation, rehabilitation, and installation program to connect the waters in our 11,000 dams or so to the field edge of our farmers. As a result, more hectares of land will fall under irrigation, powered by massive dam construction programs, the majority of which have been completed to ensure that farmers are given maximum enabling support. Again, we applaud our president for that direction and for the achievements that have been scored thus far. On re-engagement, we not all of us are aware, coming into power as president of the Second Republic, the president made it clear that the Second Republic was about engaging, re-engaging, reconnecting, connecting, and restoration of friendship and mending of relationships, as well as intensifying relations with our all-weather friends. We are proud that His Excellency, the President, has not deviated from that goal and from that objective. He has managed to grow and deepen the relations with our all-weather friends, the People's Republic of China, and the Russian Federation, and India, among others. We are proud that during his presidency, we have escalated dialogue with our Western foes to an interministerial level, which has seen the significant steps headlined by the removal of Agribank, IDBZ, several chemicals from the sanctions measures. And I left out here the Complex company also, the fertilizer manufacturing companies which had been placed under sanctions. We have seen removal of those sanctions thus far. There is now engagement between government and those who have maintained a hostile policy and posture on us. Although the USA is threatening more sanctions, we are proud that some countries in the EU have warmed to our innocence and are ready to engage with us. And in my last week's press conference, we are urging government, as we still do, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade to engage the transitional team of the President-elect of the United States of America, to engage them and make an appeal to them to unconditionally remove sanctions against Zimbabwe. As we re-engage, ZANU-PF makes it categorically clear that re-engagement should not be misconstrued as a policy of appeasement to the former colonial masters or to those countries which imposed sanctions against Zimbabwe. It is re-engagement and not appeasement, period. On political reforms, ZANU-PF is happy and proud to note that under President E.D. Mnangagwa's leadership, the nation has seen significant gains in terms of political reforms, which have seen the relaxation of and repealing of laws that were constraints on our people's freedoms. We have removed POSA and AIPA to ensure that our people can enjoy rights provided in our constitution, which are natural and as old as humankind. The freedom of the media has been guaranteed, restored and guaranteed through the enactment of friendly laws that the media plays its role in society freely but accurately. Under President E.D. Mnangagwa's administration, the nation has seen the deepening of multi-party democracy to the extent that in the previous 2018 elections, the nation witnessed a historic 23 presidential candidates and several other independent contestants in other spaces. This is a clear gesture that our democracy is growing and maturing in the new dispensation. We still have a long way to go, but clearly the direction has been pointed out to us by our president, and all that we need to do is to take a step-by-step journey towards fulfillment of that journey. We, however, are unavailable to provide consultancy to those other parties that are splitting or collapsing. And we hope no one considers us responsible. We also face our own challenges internally, as was shown before 2017, but we are brave enough to confront these challenges head-on, as we did in 2017, as we will do in the future should we face any challenges. And we resolve them ourselves. And we have never sought to blame our political neighbors when we meet those challenges, or when we face those challenges. ZANU-PF also reiterates that the political reforms we are putting in place are intended to increase the democratic space for our people and are not to be taken or misconstrued as a conditionality for re-engagement. On the culture of dialogue, ZANU-PF takes pride in President E.D. Mnangagwa's creation of a dialogue platform where all political players converge to exchange ideas on how to tackle challenges and take the nation and its people forward, instead of remaining trapped and stuck to our selfish political goals. We are proud of the positive response that Pollard received, which makes it the only platform of convergence between and among major political players in the country. In fact, we have said so repeatedly, Chamisa and his coterie of players are welcome to join Pollard at any time. He must stop posturing. He must stop punching above his weight. Indeed, the creation of Pollard demonstrates the statesmanship of President E.D. Mnangagwa. ZANU-PF believes that elections come and go, and when they go, the immediate task is to bury election fever and quarrels associated with contestations and focus on delivering service to our people. This is the purpose of Pollard: politics of weaponizing hate, sabotage, violence, smearing the nation, and undermining leadership and due process is not only a character of the Stone Age era, but alien and anti-people. Those who reject dialogue and opt for violence will continue to be punished by the laws and our constitution, while the masses of our people will finish them off come election time in 2023. ZANU-PF believes that leadership is dialogue because dialogue is leadership. We fought for the liberation and independence of everyone and everything Zimbabwean: people, animals, trees, birds, fish, and our natural environment. We fought for mastery of our own resources. As such, there is no Zimbabwean that does not owe us an acknowledgement. I mean, owe ZANU-PF an acknowledgement, despite the severity of our political differences, of whatever amount of disdain some minority sections might have on us. As such, ZANU-PF makes it known today on this platform and will keep on reminding you that this is the home of the people's revolution. And therefore, we are, as we have always said, open to dialogue with any Zimbabwean, just as much as we are open to anyone who wishes to trace or to retrace their roots back to ZANU-PF. On infrastructure revolution, when he took his oath of service as president, His Excellency Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa declared that Zimbabwe is open for business. This was a deliberate policy to open up the country for investment, both local and foreign direct investment. Under the previous dispensation, investment had been thrown out of the window through some of our legislation, which may have been considered relevant at the time, but imperatively required adjustment in the current framework. I'm referring to that 51-49% legislation, which said an investor who brings 100 million, 51 belonged to an individual, and 49 was the investor's money. That clearly was not a reasonable legislation in terms of attracting investments, which is since that portion has since been amended. For this reason, the new dispensation has pinned infrastructure revolution as a critical enabler of investment into the country. The roads rehabilitation programs currently underway, the massive opening up of the society to information communication technologies, the expansion of power generation plants, and the amendments to the legislative framework attests to the seriousness of the new dispensation and President E.D. Mnangagwa's administration to investment and economic growth through production. In his maiden speech to the masses of our people in the world, President E.D. Mnangagwa proclaimed a zero tolerance to corruption at every level of society. In his own words, those, and I quote, "those accused of corruption will have to carry their own cross before the law, and justice will be meted out without fear or favor." End of quote. I want to emphasize here that when people are arrested, they are arrested by independent institutions of government who are mandated to fight corruption, who are mandated to arrest people suspected of commission of corruption. And the president has no role to play in arrest, prosecution of who will be corrupt people. That is the responsibility, firstly, of the Zimbabwe Republic Police, secondly, of the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, and other agencies who may be mandated to fight corruption, ZIMRA and so forth. SACU also is one of those agencies. So anything that they do, they must be accountable to over the failures or successes of the anti-corruption fight. And it is the president who has set them up. They've been set up under the Constitution, and it is their responsibility to make sure that they deliver on the promise of His Excellency, zero tolerance to corruption. A 3 month, as you recall, a 3 month moratorium was declared, which expired in March 2018. It was extended to end of April 2018, where all those who had started the process of corruption from the old dispensation were required to return their loot or process of corruption in exchange for their freedom, for the stay of prosecution or pardon. We all know a record of $700 million was recovered, and we say hats off to the president. Those who did not heed to this moratorium and did not return have faced the law, and some are still facing it, and their cases are pending. Those who have been fingered as being on the wrong side of the law have been either dismissed from cabinet, party ranks, while some have been convicted. An often asked question is what happened to the criminals who surrounded the former president, as announced in November 2017. Those who have been charged have had their cases before the courts, and we have no right to interfere with the courts on what to do with them. The courts are independent and should remain so. Justice does not operate that way. The government, the executive, should never interfere in the administration of justice. Of course, some of those criminals around the former late president ran away and are now fugitives from justice and processes which have begun for them to be, and processes have begun to have them extradited back to face the law and clear themselves. The president has revamped the Anti-Corruption Commission and put in place in this commission in the safe and able hands of Justice Matanda Moyo, which has seen the institution viciously sniffing out corrupt elements in our society. To complement the efforts of the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, the president instituted SACU as an anti-corruption unit to ensure that all hands are on the deck when it comes to dealing with this cancerous societal vice. The two anti-corruption units have done their job diligently without fear or favor, and the party stands with them 1,000%. Those who have committed to fighting those two institutions or three institutions, including the police, either have a cup of worms that smacks of corruption themselves, or if they don't have, they must redirect their energy to fighting corruption, period. On COVID-19 disaster, one of the major scores that we are proud of our president, His Excellency E.D. Mnangagwa, and the Second Republic, is Zanu-PF, is the manner in which the nation has handled the COVID-19 pandemic. Although nobody anticipated it, and was never part of our vision. It was never part of the imponderables that we thought we would face. Its presence became imminent, leaving a trail of massive disruption of economies across the world, and thousands upon thousands of deaths worldwide. Some prophets of doom, including the media, wrote Zimbabwe off, projecting that millions of Zimbabweans were going to die. To date, as I speak to you now, the 19th of November 2020, we have lost 261 Zimbabweans, notwithstanding that the world around us is in sixes and sevens as a result of this pandemic. On a score of performance in the fight against COVID-19, Zimbabwe has been favorably rated among countries at 138 countries, with the worst rated country, USA, at number 1. We are still fighting it, and we have defied all odds. We have fought it with local resources and our peoples, with support from our all-weather friends, while Tendai Biti of the MDC Alliance has been busy writing to the IMF and the World Bank not to give Zimbabwe any support in the COVID-19 relief funds. We must say here that we are very disappointed with these world organizations, that they would heed a call from a disgruntled individual and not support Zimbabwe, which is a shareholder. We are a shareholder of the IMF. We are a shareholder of the World Bank. Now they heed a call from an anti-people individual who writes to them not to support us by giving us COVID-19 relief funds. On our own, we have improved on our disaster preparedness as a nation, despite working under an environment of sanctions imposed on us at the request of the MDCs. To this end, Zimbabwe and Zanu PF deserves respect. Now, I want to address you now on the recently launched national development strategy. The ruling party, ZANU-PF, is pleased to congratulate His Excellency, the President, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa, for launching the 5-year national development strategy. 1, to run from January 2021 to December 2025 under the theme towards a prosperous and empowered upper middle income society by 2030. This National Development Strategy 1, 2021-2025 is, as we all know, is the successor to the Transitional Stabilization Program and is the first 5-year medium-term plan aimed at realizing the country's Vision 2030. This is our first unique Pan-African National Development Plan strategy crafted by the Second Republic and is aimed at propelling the achievement of Vision 2030. It is a national development strategy that has taken into account international best practice and the dictates of Africa's Vision 2063, which is our Pan-Africa's 50-year development agenda running from 2013 to 2063. The plan has also been guided by the International Blueprint on Poverty Reduction, that is the UN Sustainable Development Goals running from 2016 to 2030. His Excellency the President is to be applauded for coming up with this economic document, which aims at creating a prosperous Zimbabwe with an economic growth of 5% of gross domestic product per annum, thus joining Africa's fastest growing economies. Over the past few years, Africa has been home to some of the fastest growing economies, and we are happy that through the effective implementation of this document and our concerted efforts, Zimbabwe will be counted also among the top. Zanu PF therefore calls upon all Zimbabweans, regardless of political affiliations, to join hands and make the growth rate envisaged in this plan a reality. This high inclusive growth rate should improve the standard of living of all Zimbabweans. We are very pleased as a party that the plan is focused on some of the following priorities and critical areas, which have always appeared in our manifesto and resolutions from our annual party conferences. And these are achieving sustainable economic development, namely macroeconomic stability and financial re-engagement. 2, inclusive economic growth. 3, governance. 4, structural transformation. 5, human capital development. 6, image building and international engagement, re-engagement and investment promotion. 7, social protection of the marginalized and of our population. Youth development and gender. So far, I must say that we need to work harder to achieve inclusivity for the youth and gender. Also 9, devolution. 10, infrastructure and utilities. And 11, health and well-being, and many others mentioned in the National Development Strategy 1 document. This strategy is organized around the above interconnected pillars that are aimed at achieving Vision 2030. These key pillars will enable economic growth through policy interventions and the related increased investments in agriculture, mining, manufacturing, tourism, energy, public infrastructure, improved service delivery in education and health, as well as expanding the frontiers of the digital income. In summary, the macroeconomic objectives of NDSI-S1 are to achieve an average economic growth rate of at least 5%, to maintain fiscal deficits averaging not more than 3% of GDP or below, in line with the SADC target, and to achieve and maintain lower single-digit inflation, and also to increase international reserves to at least 6 months import cover by 2025, and establish a market-determined and competitive foreign exchange rate regime, as well as maintaining public and publicly guaranteed external and domestic debt to GDP at below 70% of GDP. We want, under this national development strategy, to maintain a current account balance of not more than minus 3% of GDP, and to create 760,000 jobs, formal jobs that is, over the 5-year strategy period. We also want to improve infrastructure development and investment in energy, water, sanitation, roads, and housing. And finally, one of the objectives is to accelerate value addition and beneficiation in agriculture and mining. This strategy document recognizes that economic growth comes from the full employment of the factors of production, namely land, labor, and capital. I'm happy that the first two are squarely under our watch, under our control. What we are going to need as we go forward is capital. We can raise ourselves by our own bootstraps, using our own resources, and we can fly. But our takeoff will be that of an aeroplane. If we have full access to capital, both domestic and international capital, this country will take off like a rocket. So the National Development Strategy, one document, has laid out how these factors will be stimulated and coordinated through appropriate policy to operate harmoniously in order to achieve Vision 2030. Now, what are our observations? We are making this, Zanu is making these key observations. Government must continue to focus on the following enablers to achieve Vision 2030. It must continue dismantling the parallel market for foreign exchange, foreign currency, i.e. penalize the private sector conglomerates that fuel this activity, if that is the case. Leverage trade policy as a stimulus for growth to open up new markets for mining and agricultural produce. 3, leverage gold as a stimulus for growth and mobilization of domestic savings. I was talking about access to capital. Gold is one such where we could, with good management, we could mobilize domestic savings. 4, we must leverage agriculture as a stimulus for employment and productive sector growth. And 5, we must decentralize National Development Strategy 1 to provinces so that provinces take ownership of this document so as to achieve economic growth in their respective provinces and report on this progress every 6 months. It is our hope as ZANU-PF that this national development strategy will be used to combat sanctions. It will tell the whole world that Zimbabwe is open for business. It will shame our detractors locally and internationally by showing them through this development strategy 1 that Zimbabwe is on an unstoppable growth trajectory. There is need to effectively focus on implementation. The success of the National Development Strategy 1 will depend on effective implementation. ZANU-PF will, throughout the implementation period, keep a stern eye. I want to repeat, ZANU-PF will keep a stern eye on ministries, government departments, parastatals, and other state institutions and agencies responsible for implementation of various facets of the National Development Strategy. And ZANU-PF will not hesitate to name and shame those ministries and state institutions and agencies which ZANU-PF considers to be sleeping on their job and being lax in the implementation of National Development Strategy 1. Finally, on this issue, as a party, we call upon all government we call upon our structures and government agencies and departments to disseminate this document widely and educate the people of Zimbabwe in both the urban and rural areas on the benefits of effectively implementing this national development strategy. I should have, before I introduced my comments on the National Development Strategy 1, I should have said something to say about the transitional stabilization program. We all know that the new dispensation is about the people. Yes, the people. We have accelerated economic development to ensure that we respond to the plight of our people with the ultimate objective of achieving an upper middle income economic society by 2030, in line with Vision 2030. ZANU PF is proud of the indelible success marks left by the Transitional Stabilization Program, TSP, and the second phase, which we are now embarking upon, which is the recently launched National Development Strategy 1. At the center of these initiatives, TSP and NDS1 have been to stabilize the TSP was to stabilize the financial sector and get rid of leakages and loopholes that had seen the value of our currency being determined from the streets by speculative, illicit money changers. We applaud His Excellency the President. We applaud the Minister of Finance and Economic Development. We applaud the Reserve Bank Governor, Dr. Mangudla, for the foreign currency auction system, for the disbandment of fungibility, tightening of measures on mobile money transfers, acceleration of exports trade, and the restoration of confidence in the financial sector, and the resultant effect of which has been price stability and a stable foreign exchange rate. In the same vein, we have created an environment where the ease of doing business has been accelerated to ensure that unnecessary bureaucracies are dealt with. I need to conclude my remarks on saying something about job creation. Under the new dispensation, and you must give it to President E.D. Mnangagwa and to ZANU PF, under his administration, we have seen a creation of at least 500,000 formal jobs, with 200,000 of those having been created under the harsh conditions of COVID-19. The President has opened several industries, from manufacturing, mining, retail industries, fishing, and infrastructure revolutionary programs, which have been the major creators of the jobs. The roads infrastructure program, rehabilitation program, going on across the nation, coupled with the dams construction and irrigation schemes, not forgetting the robust small-scale and large-scale mining activities. All these have contributed to the creation of the jobs which I've referred to above. We are now calling upon for massive investments in sports and arts industry to ensure that no sector is left behind. We are also calling upon, we are calling upon the government to intensify the irrigation programs so as to be able to utilize the vast water reserves which are stored in the 11,000 or so dams of various sizes. As I sum up this special update since Operation Restore Legacy, and I'm going to give some opportunity to Comrade Mahia to say something about the events preceding Operation Restore Legacy. I must say we faced our own fair share of challenges and obstacles, chief among them being continued sanctions, sponsored violence has happened on the 1st of August 2018 and from the 14th to the 16th of January 2019, and smear campaigns that we have suffered under through the social media openly and is fronted by hostile media elements. Unscrupulous business players and corrupt elements in local authorities. We are all aware that what has been going on in our local authorities is the MDC-run local authorities, Harare, Bulawayo, you name them, Gweru, you name them, Mashingo. Anywhere where you see the footprints of MDC, you must immediately smell corruption. All this has happened, and we've been able to overcome them, notwithstanding that we also suffered from the ravages of Cyclone Idai, COVID-19, and 2 successive droughts, very erratic rainfall supplies, which it requires us now that we should intensify irrigation programs. We are, however, happy to have done so much despite these harsh conditions. And as we round up the year, we do so with pride, with our heads held high, with our confidence doubled, tripled, knowing full well that we shall overcome. As far as we are concerned, 2023 election is a foregone conclusion. In fact, it's over before the people vote. I want to make a special, we must, where credit is due, we must give it. And I want to give credit to His Excellency for his bravery in tackling a thorny issue which was considered a taboo and could not be discussed or debated and so forth. I refer to the Gukura Hundi issue. This is a milestone achievement and an act of courage and bravery on the part of His Excellency, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa, that he has put it in the public glare for debate and for discussion, that he has engaged traditional leadership, the people of Matabeleland and Midlands, who were affected by this disaster in our nation building. We need to give him all the plaudits that he deserves. I now give my colleague here just an opportunity to say, not entirely, his memoirs will take many books, to say the role of the war veterans. I mention this because the war veterans are the guarantors outside the Constitution, are the guarantors of the political stability of this country, are the guarantors of the democratic constitution that we've enacted as a nation, are the guarantors of the continuing and continued prosperity of this country. When they think that we are straying, you can count on them to call the shots. You can count on them to crack the whip. And I'm happy for the role that they played in the lead up to Operation Restore Legacy. It was very clear the Constitution was being violated, not just of the nation, but also of the Zanu PF. It was all very clear in full view of everyone. It was the Zanu, it was the war veterans who stood firm and principled to oppose what in fact was taking place. And I want to give Comrade Mahia, who was one of the pillars of that movement, spearheaded by the war veterans. Let's not forget also that it was the war veterans when they thought that we were lax in fulfilling the objectives of the land of the armed struggle, that is the repossession of our land. It was the war veterans who called the shots and said, you have to. For that, we remain indebted to them for what they've done and what we will continue to expect them to do in the future to keep the nation on its toes, to ensure that we do not forget the sacrifices that our compatriots suffered and made sacrifices during the armed struggle. Comrade Mahia.
I think I must thank the President first and foremost for what has happened since that time. The party has risen to our expectations. On this day, today, was a Central Committee meeting that agreed to promote the veterans of the liberation struggle in the party and in government. But let me also take this opportunity to tell the nation probably why they were veterans by that time. And like what our acting secretary for information said about the question of land when we called the shots, why war veterans? So why war veterans yesterday, why war veterans today, and why war veterans tomorrow must be understood that we are taking this center stage because we belong to a generation that has been assigned by a philosophy, and the philosophy is the Chimurenga philosophy. The Chimurenga philosophy rightly is spoken to by the culture of the people of Zimbabwe, who, and whichever culture one comes from or tribe comes from, was a chieftainship where governance played the center stage. So Chimurenga philosophy connects the people to amongst themselves. Hence, my comrades, it is about consideration of each other and that particular person's value and that particular person's skills to be utilized for the benefit of society. And that is what they called by that time socialism. Number two, Chimurenga philosophy speaks to a nation being connected to its land. And the war veterans, like what you got just a few minutes ago, that we fired shots in order to connect the people to their land. It is because Zanu PF, as a political party, is the one that organized or that owns the war veterans in terms of the knowledge that they have to direct and be able to be vigilant enough to call shots when necessary. So we connected the people with their land. The war veterans connected the people with their land, and the war veterans are Zanu PF because they are a creation of the people of Zimbabwe that came together and they created a political party. That must be understood. So we are assigned, or in the party constitution, we are assigned, and it is known by the party, that we are forever custodians of the Zimbabwean revolution. So being custodians of the Zimbabwean revolution, we are protected by the revolutionary fundamentals, revolutionary principles and fundamentals to continue with the revolution until forever. So I remember November very well. It was not a period of joy. However, you wanted to know, my war veterans, so we don't enjoy it. We enjoy when things are difficult and when it seems like there is no formula to find a solution, we will bring the solutions. And we did it. We did just that 2017 in November. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a year when I got baptized and became a war veteran and a detainee. It was a time when my personal relationship with the Comrade Matema Danda came to its highest, and it is even difficult today for me to think that one day I may lose that relationship and that friendship with him, because it was a time that the old dispensation was the hardest and the most cruel than ever to us. War veterans are charged with the responsibility to ensure that the dictates of the people of Zimbabwe are carried forward. And in November, we were simply doing that. It is not a thing that started in November. It is the reason why we were very clear. We did not tell the former president to resign.
We didn't say he must go away. We simply told him that when your time is up, you don't mislead the nation or do the wrong thing as dictated by the revolution to give the powers of this country to any other than the people. That is what we said. We even cited a period when the former president became president in Chimoyo. He was elected because he was the most senior. The Zanu PF existed during that time that you can remember. And the former president became president because that time he was the most senior. And we were saying, for as long as we are taking back the powers of this land to the people, it has to be with the most senior person of the party at that time. And during that other time, when the former president was going to call it a day, he was supposed to go back to the people, and the people were going to call upon the most senior to take the reins of power. And the most senior was Comrade Idi Mnangagwa. Hence, he was the target of the G4 cabal. The G4 cabal was on him. It was also on us. We were called names, but those names never prevail and will not. And what I can tell the nation, with the opportunity permitted, in this country, the revolutionary fundamentals and the principles will always and will need to be adhered to. We wait for no command to ensure that that has been done. But all we do is to ensure that the principles and the fundamentals, the dictates of the Zimbabwean or Zimbabwean society culture is adhered to. We don't need to wait for any other command other than what we have agreed before 1980, because we went through rigorous training and the political orientation and had benchmarks. This is a revolution. It has stages. So even the MDC, when it came to reality, we knew that at some stage there will be neocolonialism. Neocolonialism to us simply means the reorganization of our erstwhile enemy to try and take that power that we had taken from them once more and put their own puppets. So we are aware. And Comrade Chinamasa, it may not be appropriate, but I should tell you as Secretary for Veterans of the Liberation Struggle that we are waiting for a command. We can return the sanctions back to the British and the Americans. And we have the formula, but we shall not speak until command tells us, or until we discover that the efforts by government and the efforts by the party seem to be hitting the wall. We'll wait for no command, but we'll do what we know best and return the sanctions. And I mean it, return the sanctions back to the British and the Americans. I think for today, that will be okay. I must thank you for being here, because I will always remember this day in November and I will not forget it. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to